So, welcome everybody to the first collaborative panel talk between ICE conference and Visual Effects Megabrain series, with one of the themes that we don't have to mention a lot. We talk about beyond visual effects because it has to do much more just about visual effects and artistry and artificial intelligence involved in it. It has to do the way of thinking that, and changes we have to be aware of and what it comes with the responsibility of that. Matt and I tried through our experience to gather the most different people that represent our industry and also represent the ethics very deeply in this matter. So I'm happy to have all of you, four panelists here with different themes that we are going to talk today. We know everybody here that we can talk about this long, a few days maybe. So uh, if you have questions from the audience, please use just Q&A button and not the general chat. The question of general chat will not be answered. And I am sure that at the end of the question can be made at any time, but they will be answered just at the end of the session if the time promises. If not, we will see the way that our panelists will have an answer and will put them somehow online so you will have access of it with a recording or similar. So my name is Agon Rushaku. I am a VS Germany chairman and the curator of VS Megabrain Masterclasses. A lot of you know me. And today I'm co-hosting this with Matthias Bühler, who I'm giving further to present himself and then to our panelists. Matthias, the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Agon. I hope you can hear me well. So my name is Matthias Bühler. I'm the main organizer of the ICE conference. And as Agon mentioned at the very beginning, we're basically co-hosting this event together. And so there's also a little bit of an overlap of the different industries. So the ICE conference is everything about 3D environments. So that actually can that's something that is used in multiple industries, not only visual effects, but I personally worked a bit in VFX in past, but originally I'm an architect, and I've been doing consulting and so in multiple industries. So I know a lot of different use cases, but I would say deep inside in my heart, I'm an artist, I would say, and a very technical artist. But we can go into more details later on. And it's a pleasure to be able to have this privilege of co-hosting this event. And thanks also from my side to the Visual Effects Society.
So, who wants to start with presenting? I'm seeing just how they are sorted in my screen. Ben, you should start, I will say. Yeah.
Thanks, Agon. Nice to meet you and nice to be here. Thanks for the invite. So I've been working in visual effects and animation for over 25 years as a supervisor, producer, head of studio. There's been a lot of changes over those few decades, and I know we're going to talk a lot more about that tonight. I currently am at Los Angeles working with Moon Valley and Stereo Film, where we're integrating new technology into existing pipelines with artists and studios, really looking to embrace and find out more about how technology is evolving and how you can use it.
Thank you, Ben. And I go further to Dr. Jana Sedlakova.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jana Sedlakova. Thank you so much for the invitation. It's great to be here. I'm a philosopher and ethicist with quite an unusual background. So I was in and off in academia. I used to work as innovation ethicist before when the ethics of AI started to be cool. And then I joined the PhD at the University of Zurich, where I very much focus on the ethics of conversational artificial intelligence in mental health care. But I always work with interdisciplinary teams, with health researchers and data scientists and computer scientists. And I was always driven by understanding how AI is changing our activities, but also understanding of key concepts such as trust, for example. And currently, I'm a postdoc at the University of Zurich at the Department of Informatics, but actually on Monday, I will start a new job in Oxford. So I'm in this transitional period, and I'm very much looking forward to the discussion today.
And we are certainly very much looking forward to hear what you have to say about this brilliant team that we have. And I will give it over to Frank Govares. So, Frank, sorry, I just realized how we speak your family name. I didn't know that E is really like not to hear. Is that right? Did I say it right? Govare, right?
You said it 100% correct.
Thanks a lot.
I am based in Berlin, but I am actually Belgian, hence the funny family name. I've been working in animation, visual effects, extended reality for 35 years. I started out when everything was still very analog. Through 2D animation, I came to 3D animation, to visual effects. I was in charge of the visual effects department of UFA for almost 10 years. I was involved in setting up the volumetric studio in Potsdam-Babelsberg, and I was head of the virtual production studio Halo Stage for 2.5 years. So I've always been on the edge between art, innovation, and technology.
And not least, but I have to say that Frank is a very good author, and he has really very nice articles at LinkedIn, and he published his books as well that you can take on Kindle. I read them really very well, and I like the examples that he is taking, like Leonardo and things like that, and in comparing with today what's happening with AI. So I have really a strong reason why I wanted to have him in this panel, and you will see it yourself as well. So last but not least, a good friend of mine, Victor Perez, and a very well-seen guide in AI, visual effects, and everything. Victor?
Hi, well, thank you for having me. My name is Victor Perez. I'm a visual effects supervisor. I love everything that has lights and buttons, and I have been in the industry for way too long. So almost 30 years. Yeah, I've seen a few changes, and hopefully this is going to be one of them.
So that a little bit, everybody, that you know that we have really a very good, a lot of marbles here that give different colors when the light hits about things that we want to know. And I will give now to my co-host Matthias further so he can start with, we have tried somehow to get together some points that are very important, that matter, or people are now asking themselves how it is about that. And I know when it comes to AI, we have more questions than answers, but it's all like this when something new is coming up. That's why the experience and the past of these and of these panelists here and what they are doing right now and their expertise will shed a little bit light, maybe from different angles that a lot of us together here haven't seen it yet. So, Matthias, you can go on with your questions.
Sweet. All right. Thank you for that. Let's get started. So, I mean, I'm coming from a position why I'm so deeply interested in all of those topics is because I was employed for a long time, and I know how it feels to be employed. And now with my own company since a couple of years, I am also in the position of the employer. So with the dawn or with the rise of the newer generation, let's say post ChatGPT, post 2022, I needed to define my values, and I needed to define the company values. And I needed to be in a position where I want to, or where I have to give answers to my staff that asks, hey, Matt, as a 3D artist, will we have a job in your company in a year? And if we as artists, or let's say technical artists, if we are here and we are investigating and we're doing a lot of technical research, I have multiple engineers working at my companies, very, very good engineers. And so when we are doing research in the field of AI, will this basically translate just into the direction of, well, we will have work for 1 more year, but we're just there to train the systems, which then eliminate us 2 years from now, right? So that hits a person like me. This hits really deep because I know how it feels to be employed. And so with that, I needed to dig into all of those topics and look at it from all aspects: business, technology, culture, psychology, leadership, motivation of people, HR, and so on, helping people. And so with that, I got very deeply into those topics, and they became very, very dear to me. And I think they also make me, or give me a rare position, because I have to deal with all of those things. And I'm very active in talking about these things I've given multiple presentations. For example, in the visual effects industry, I just about a month ago or so, I gave a keynote about exactly those topics at the View conference in Turin. And so with that in mind, with the research which I'm doing, I see a ton of different topics which I'm aware of, but not most people are aware of. And I want to basically help with addressing those topics. The starting point for the discussion tonight for me is basically, we're all aware of the topic of ethics in AI, but what most people are not aware of is that there are multiple types of ethics that act directly. Let's say, for example, like how training data is used. That's the most commonly known one. But there are also indirect ethics which are in place, in the sense of, what does it mean to society, or what does it mean to colleagues if I use AI indirectly? So what's the indirect impact, right? So the very, very first point basically is, let's try to address the different types of ethics that are linked to the discourse of AI in general, or in general also in art or in other industries, and which of the lesser known aspects should we be aware of? And I think the fantastic start would be to ask the ethics specialist, Diana, what's your take on this?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. It's of course a very big question, but I will try to answer it in a short time. I would say one important aspect is looking at the relationships in the teamwork and the people that are behind the work, and looking how these people collaborate, what values bring them together, what virtues they have, and then how AI can change these relationships and can change the processes that are made there. And we should, of course, protect these relationships. So with this connected are the ethical questions about what norms should govern the human AI collaborations, what can be changed for the better or for the worse, and how can we protect these relationships and the teamwork. But then also another question is what we value. What are the values around it, around this new technology? And of course, the core value is efficiency, right? we need to be efficient, but there are other important values that we should protect. So I would also look at it from this perspective of values and the virtues that the artists have and should be appreciated, and how we can appreciate it and protect it. And then finally, just one more, this is for me personally very important. So I always try to look at the ethical issues from the perspective of theory of knowledge. And again, how we gain new knowledge, how we make decisions. And again, as far as I know, in the visual effects industry and in the work, there are many decisions that are made. And they're not only technical decisions. And the question is, again, how these decisions will be impacted by AI, and what values and what guardrails we need to protect them. And finally, one more note about the art. So what is art, right? This is a very, very old philosophical question in the aesthetics, but I would say that art is an expression of humanity, and maybe we should remember it. And again, remember the relationships that are there. For example, when I watch movies, I want to know about the director and the team behind it, and see the credentials at the end of the movie and actually watch them. So just a very brief version of the answer.
Very nice. Let's move on to Frank. What is your opinion in, let's say, that was there a shift over the last, let's say, years that you've been in the business, specifically about not necessarily the ethics of AI in general, but also ethics in general, what it means to produce art or movies?
What I have noticed is that this whole discussion has become very emotional. If you think about it, we have been using artificial intelligence, or we used to call it machine learning in visual effects and animation for like decades. And I think what is making this whole discussion at the moment so emotional is that the whole thing has become so binary. It's like you are either against AI or you're in favor of it. And it is also what the marketing for AI is telling us is like, oh, marketing will completely replace you. And I think that is where this thing that you addressed, where your employees are asking, will I have a job in 1 year? It becomes very emotional, and it's not really based on facts anymore. And that is the biggest thing that I'm seeing. And I've seen this in a few developments, like when cinema went from analog to digital, people were very worried about it. And then it didn't turn out to be that bad. It's when social media started producing films and everybody was saying, oh, well, the audience is now going to produce its own films. We don't need you guys anymore. It was all taken with a grain of salt. But I think that what is changing the discussion here is, as I said, this binary vision of things, and that people feel really threatened by it. And I have in 35 years, I've seen a lot of more or less disruptive technologies coming up, but I've never seen one that was facing so much emotionality in the end. I mean, where people were so emotionally involved with what was happening, and where the whole thing had become really a matter of existence for them.
Thanks a lot. I mean, you addressed a point of this binary feeling at the moment, and there's just either you like it or you don't like it. But one component which I think is fundamental that is basically the tipping point to which side you lean is, and you also briefly addressed this in your point, is the kind of, you need to have an understanding of the technology, and especially younger people or not so technically inclined people that have learned how to do research, have let's say a solid understanding of technology, yet they may struggle with sorting through all of the information that is out there, and let's say the marketing BS versus the kind of what is real. And I struggle with this myself as a very technical person, extremely technical, every single day, and it's part of the persona, right? So that's a very strong dynamic, and just I wanted to address this as kind of as a side note. Statements like yours are incredibly valuable because they give hope to younger people that struggle with finding the right, let's say, emotional state, the right stability to do their research on their own. So it's incredibly valuable to hear this because all of your statements are deeply rooted in experience. I just want to kind of bracket closed. But let's jump over to Victor. I mean, we're still in the context of the different types of ethics, which we're not addressing too much. So already we could go everywhere, right? But Victor, how do you see this with the capability or the not the cognitive function, but the mechanics of basically sorting through all of the topics for people? Or how do you do this yourself?
Well, the thing is, like, I think it's a question of timing. I think generative AI has had a boom in the worst period ever for the industry. It was in 2022, something like we were coming from the disaster of COVID, and we enter in the strikes of the actors and then the strikes of the... So it was like a period like people want stability and we got disruption. So of course you are in a state that you just want stability. So stability means conservative. I don't want new disruptive, new things. So everything is threatening my existence. So of course, as soon as you start observing how that is really, really shifting the paradigm of how things are done, yeah, the polarization gets even more extreme. And I'm not even going to enter in the use of artificial intelligence to polarize the opinions because it's happening in the social media. So it is really difficult just to have a sort of objective point of view of the matter because I am involved emotionally because it's my job, I need to pay my bills. And then I have like so many different voices that are either AI is the problem or AI is the solution. So nobody is just addressing AI as an addition to something that is in there. So having that in mind, it is really difficult to have a conversation, to have a mature conversation. And that is happening to me because I'm very curious about this. But like a child, I just want to break things just to see how they are inside. But to break things, you need to go deep. You need to get your hands dirty. You need to use things. So right now, sharing something on LinkedIn, for instance, just to say, hey, I'm trying this. What do you think about that? And I'm genuinely curious about what other people, because in that exchange is where we all are going to grow. But what I find is like, not everybody is open to the dialogue. I have been shut down by many people. It's like, what are you doing? How do you dare? This thing of that was one that told me, how do you dare to go there? I was not expecting that from you. I thought, what? My job is just to use technology for creating things? How can I not use that? So this is the most difficult part. It's really difficult to evolve together if we don't listen to each other. So having this kind of conversation, of course, is great that we have this, but this could be open. This would be something to talk in the bar, to talk during breakfast, to talk having a cigarette. People must talk because just by exchanging, maybe we can find a common ground and maybe we can evolve even with laws, because laws are going to be like the succession of the ethical, but the ethical code is going to rise when we face the things. We cannot imagine the ethic code that we need for things that we are never used. So we need to use it to figure out. So this is the real problem that we have. It's like we need to talk, and we need to talk to listen and to understand each other, not to reply just to say you are wrong or no, you are wrong. But that is just different points of view. So that is my opinion on this.
No, I think you're absolutely right in the sense of there should be a dialogue. And I'm curious about Ben's opinion also. But also, I just wanted to add something that I personally feel very, very strongly in kind of the inner turmoil, is that within myself, but I also sense this on LinkedIn, sense this in dialogues which I have with people, is there even a dialogue possible? Not, and I mean this not in the sense of you and me, but is the system rigged so that, let's say, there are powers in play, powers acting that are so viciously, let's say, pushing forward and so ultimately strong that not even the legislation can react fast enough to protect societies, multiple, in the sense of the game is rigged anyway. There's nothing we can do. There's not even law can keep these things, these systems, and these companies in check, right? And why I see this, where this is arising is in the, let's say, marketing statements of certain companies, let's say OpenAI as the prime example, saying, hey, we're doing everything, AI is for the better of humanity so that nobody has to work again, and so on. But what's not happening is that they are not talking to the leaders of legislations in the different countries, not talking to the leaders of the, let's say, of the countries to say, how can we work together and ease the different societies into a mode, into basically a slowly progressing over 10, 15, 20 years into a post-AI economy, addressing also, let's say, all of the issues of elderly care, of all of those things, right? And so this is where I think I see that some people, including myself, think it's, well, what can I even do anymore? It's not even worth to have the discussion, right? So Ben, what's your opinion so far? What's your, let's say, take on this, and how do you potentially also address some of the critiques which you get in doing what you do as a business?
Yeah, thanks so much. Well, I kind of feel I do this day in and day out. And I feel that my whole job at the moment is supporting the industry to a point of view where, hey, there's a great opportunity here for people. There's new technologies come out. And if I look back and things, a good example is motion capture. So when motion capture kind of became a big thing, animators quite understandably really opposed it. Oh, taking away animation. And very quickly, as people started to work with that technology, they could see that actually it doesn't replace animators. You still need animators. In fact, what it does is it replaces the animation that people don't want to do. And, you know, that was a real thing. And in a way, I look at it and I think, well, what was the difference between that and this? Well, the difference is that only was for animation. And what we're talking about now is a technology that affects every single department in visual effects, every department in animation, all the way from marketing through development, writing, design, production, everyone. So everyone's affected by it, which I think is partly why it's become a much more emotional topic. People tend to get excited or scared when they're things they don't really understand, and they only look at a consequence. So, you know, as we've all talked about here, now's the time to really dig in, because when we talk about what can we do about this, well, actually, you know, we are the community. We are the visual effects community. If anyone can do anything, we can, right? If you think about all the decision makers in our jobs, they're all VFX people. So as a community, we make the choices. We decide the direction. The more you understand the technology and you can see where it benefits and where it doesn't really help, the more you'll know what decisions to take. If I think about, you know, again, if I think about the artists, the people who are actually on the box, they're doing the work. My job as when I'm producing shows, I always trust the artists. All right. I trust the team. We talk about, okay, how do we want to approach this shot? How do we want to approach this project? And the better the people know the technology, the better their answers will be about how we can approach that. The people on the box using this technology are visual effects people. Right? Please remember that. That's so important. The visual effects people are the people going to make the choices when they're using this technology. They will decide, hey, I can use Gen AI for this. I can use traditional keyframing. I can do paint work. Whatever it is, they'll be the ones making the choice. Let's start with that, right? Let's start with that and have that conversation amongst ourselves and let us set the direction. That's my take on it.
Ben, just an additional question to this one. You are in the middle of this change because you were, like you said, I know your history, and now you're working for this. How do you personally make this working with you? Because it's not about this binary thing, what Frank was mentioning. It's actually there. Yeah. Why? Binarity is always there when you don't understand something, when fear is on the top. And right now we are on the fear phase. It's something like, but since people tend to simplify things always and want simpler, and we live in the world that try to do things cheaper and faster, of course that every conversation will be first binary because of the fear. I think we have, I don't know if Dr. Jana will agree, but I think we have first to address that it's nothing to be feared for the new things. We have to be open, exactly like Victor said, to talk about that. I know we are all a little bit scared what the future is bringing because we don't know. And everything that we don't know is first scary. And we try to avoid that in best manner. So how was your switch from doing this classical supervision and now working with Moon Valley? When it made click that I read the article of yours when you said, okay, maybe we are getting a completely new genre with this kind of storytelling, things like that. So just a little bit of how you made that switch working with you. How did you overwhelm that fear or that unknown binary way of thinking? So.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, and you're right. And I've wrestled with it, and I'll explain why. When I was a little kid, I used computers, right? And it's just technology is just native to me. I don't see it as a barrier. So this technology comes along, machine learning, generative AI, etc. So I kind of got into it anyway. It was just an interesting thing to explore. But looking at it professionally, looking at it as a visual effects community, yes, I have absolutely wrestled with, oh my God, this is the worst thing that's ever happened to us. So it's such an amazing thing that's happened to us. I totally get it. I really understand where people are coming from. And there are some jobs who are, real experts in their field that are probably quite like, oh my God, this will completely take away what I do. And I'm not disagreeing with that. I think that there are definitely some roles people need to broaden their skill set. They need to look at, how will they, drive this forward. So I have absolutely wrestled with it. But over the year, I've been with Moon Valley. I've actually noticed the industry changed quite a lot. Okay. I've gone from having tomatoes thrown at me to people coming and shaking the hand because more people are using this. There's a lot of people using this. This is not, it might be hiding it away, But I tell you what, if they're not using it in the studio, they're using it at home. People are exploring this. And the more people they do it, the more they see, oh, actually, I can use it to do this part of my job, which I don't really like, or I'm not that good at, or it takes me ages and it's not very productive. So people are beginning to choose where they can use it. And that's the point I was coming back to, is people make the choice, right? So as an artist, visual effects artist, understand the technology, see where it works, where it doesn't. Speak with experience, speak with understanding, and you will be a voice people listen to. And I think that, I don't want to be the only one here saying this, and I'd love people to debate me, and I'm sure we'll do some of that. But I do think it's coming back to my journey, through technology. But actually, all visual effects artists, we all got into the technology, right? So this is not new. It's just a very powerful technology. And I think the major difference is that anything you don't tell generative AI to do specifically, it will make up. Right? If you're in Maya or Nuke or one of these packages and you don't do something, nothing happens. But in generative AI, you can point it in a direction and it will make up stuff. It will fill in all the gaps by itself, and you don't know what gaps you've left. So learning how to use it, it becomes a craft in itself. And the more you get to know it, the more you get to understand it, the more interesting it is actually as an artistic exploration, because the machine is reflecting you, right? It's reflecting what you don't tell it as much as what you do tell it. And you start to learn quite a lot about your own artistic interests and insights, and opens the door to quite a lot. So it's gonna expand in different ways, not just professionally, but also I think as a hobby.
Nice. I mean, there's so many topics. What I'm just curious, and I would like to ask Jana just very briefly regarding this, is what I just realized again in this call is it's really hard to understand how far people go with their opinions, or let's say on their ethical stance, or how far or how wide that is. So one thing which was just addressed is that there are these yucky types of production that I don't want to do, whether it's, I don't know, certain aspects of modeling or animation, or like very typically also, let's say, rotoscoping, like taking green screens and creating mats and masking all of those things. So, which is a fundamentally, or this type of task using machine learning can be really well automated, right? But so this is exactly kind of staying at the very first topic for a few more seconds, is the indirect ethics of choosing a technology, a tool, very well knowingly that for yourself it's something that you don't need to do. That kind of implies that, let's say, the studio where you work on, there's just a handful or a little bit of let's say, roto work that you need to do because you're doing it manually, so it affects yourself. But indirectly, if you have very large productions, the advent or the availability of the tools will, and your personal choice to choose to use that tool, will directly impact businesses that have been typically offshored, or types of work that have been offshored, let's say rotoscoping. So you understand where I'm trying to go, in the sense of me using that tool. I can take some of the work that was outsourced before or offshored before, do it in-house, do it potentially even much more efficient, but by the choice of choosing the tool, you know that you are going to directly replace or destroy some jobs, right? Now, my question to Jana in this context is, what is a healthy relationship with this inner discourse about, should I care? Some people don't care at all. or should I be aware of, and it's completely legitimate to not try and use a tool because it will displace other jobs? Is there some academic research in this field? Because it is an ethical indirect impact if I choose to use, let's say, a rotoscoping tool, but I don't have to offshore certain work anymore. What's the let's say, academic perspective on this ethical inner dilemma?
Yes, thank you again for this very complex question. Yes, I would say it's definitely important to ask these questions and ask these questions to yourself. But as we already discussed, and I love the comments from everyone about how it's important to talk about these things. So I would say that this shouldn't be one individual decision, but people should talk about this in the community, and the community then eventually should decide. And it's not only about the people that will not have done the job before, but it's also the questions about fairness regarding people that are already involved in developing these technologies that are usually terribly paid, and how this can also impact. I'm not aware that there is any consensus. The ethics is very much about facilitating these discussions and dialogue and bringing the communities together. So I would say, yes, it's definitely very good to ask these questions, but not staying alone with these questions, but ask your colleagues and people around and find a good solution in the end.
I mean, that's a very good advice, in not just in general, not to ruminate too much and in one thing, right? but in general to talk to people.
Jana, we
And if
lost
I may
your
add,
camera view.
oh,
We lost. Can you check your cam is not on or something is not working? But we can, as far as you can hear us and we can hear you, we can continue. That's good. So,
All right. Yeah. So, Jana, maybe what you can technically do is maybe because the camera is not
hear me.
picking up again the camera, but we'll just continue a little bit. We can cut this out of the video afterwards. It's all good. Yeah, but I would say let's let's move to another entirely new topic. So for a lot of people, kind of circling back a little bit to something that we discussed before,
Okay.
there's a distinction or a difference between the word unethical and the word illegal. And I struggled with this myself also very heavily, in the sense of, how can it be that company X does this? How can it be that they are allowed to do that? That's not nice. That's not fair. But in certain, let's say, markets, let's say US law is completely different than, let's say, law in European countries. And so how can we address this dialogue, or this aspect of the dialogue, in just or making people understand those dynamics? Where do we go? Let's go to Frank.
Well, I always think that ethics start with yourself. I mean, if you are an artist and you decide not to use copyrighted material, not to use pirated software and stuff like that, if you expect that from others, you have to start with yourself. I always say that to all the artists that I work with. If you don't want to get your stuff stolen, you shouldn't steal from other people. It's quite easy. that is something that we have control over, that we can actually do. The problem is that with AI, we're sort of losing this transparency. I mean, we cannot see where material comes from, where it has been harvested, so to say. And for a lot of people, that is also a reason why they do not want to use AI, because they're saying, I don't know where it comes from. So I think it would be in the interest of the companies that are actually providing AI services that they would be more transparent about that. Because I think that I'm not the only one in the industry that has these kind of ethics for himself. I mean, if you have been living off copyright revenue and intellectual property for like 30 years, you are sort of aware of that whole system. And it is a system that has always been, it has always worked with fairness and fair use. I mean, even if there wasn't any law. I mean, if you were using stuff, you could make it, you could do it so clandestine that nobody would notice, but you still wouldn't do it. So I believe that it would be in the interest of these companies to be more transparent about where they are getting their training data, where they are getting their stuff from. And I think that is something that we need to, as been said, the community here is very important. I think this is something that we need to voice out. Like, we don't want to basically steal from ourselves or steal from our friends and our colleagues. And I think that is a major step in finding a solution in that, because what we're seeing now is big companies like Disney and Paramount, they are suing OpenAI, and they're winning in court and stuff like that. But I don't think that that is going to make the big difference. I think the big difference comes from ourselves when we start asking these questions.
Other opinions? Other people?
I think
I could probably,
Ben,
yeah, I could probably talk all day about this, so I'll try and keep it brief. Moon Valley took the decision to only pay for licensed training data. So no internet scraping, no nothing, no downloading, no Creative Commons, no public domain. Everything is documented and paid for. So there's chain of title. We can be audited. So every studio that we talk to is delighted. They're like, okay, great. That clears a barrier for us. We can talk to you. We can use your tools. You can use your AI. So the sort of legal, commercial side of it is taken care of. No one knows what's going to happen legally. Okay, it could be that each country has a different law, and then what happens? You make a film and you can only show it in some countries, you can't show it in others. It could get really messy. So the simplest thing to do is just, baseline, only use licensed training data. But I know that that's going to be very difficult because open source models and etc. like that. There's no real way of controlling it. And the point I think Frank was making about, having your own ethics is, just got to ask yourself, was I downloading movies illegally? Right. And a lot of people were, and that didn't help the industry. Streaming came along and they didn't have to pay any residuals. So they got they could license all their content really cheaply. Was that ethical? Who knows, right? Everyone's got their own ethics. It's very hard to say. So I love Frank's idea about, look at yourself first, decide what person do you want to be? And then that's the start of the conversation. So ethics is about, legally very complicated. But what we try to do to combat ethics as well, or to support ethics, or our view of ethics, is we've got a whole team of people who design workflows for artists, right? We're not interested in going and talking to companies and say, hey, I want to fire everybody and I'm a producer or I want an executive and I want to type prompt my movies. I make a joke about it. If you want to type prompt your movie, go to a streaming service, go to the search bar and say what kind of film you want. It's already made for you. We're artists. We've got stories to tell. We're part of a team. We're a community. We work together. We have a dialogue. We support each other. That's ethics. I believe it, and that's how I've given my career to this industry. I love it with passion. The people I've worked with, I'm so proud of and delighted that I had time with them. That's what I came into this for. I appreciate there's a lot of people in this industry it's a job, and maybe it's a job they don't really like that much. And I have spoken to artists, right? They've got they're in the commodity side of it. It's just high volume turnaround. They don't even know what show they're on. They've just got tasks to tick off. That's not great. If those artists are out there and they want to do more, now's a chance they can do more. They can pick up a technology that will help deliver further. So maybe there's ethics in that too. That's maybe a topic to debate.
Yeah, I would like to add something because I saw a question in the section of Q&A, which is the difference between unethical and illegal. And it says, is legislation? I don't think so. The difference between unethical and illegal is something that you cannot do because you are going to get fine or whatever. You are going to get something against the law. But unethical means that you have a conscience that says you shouldn't do that. So it's the difference between you cannot and you should not. But the should not depends on every single individual. So ethics, I agree, ethics must be born inside an individual. And then by sharing that code, we are going to standardize certain rules. We are going to, and once the rules are standardized, legislation is just going to agree to make the ethic code a legal code. And that is the ideal. But in order to do that, we need to trigger conversation. And in order to trigger conversation, we need to practice. And in order to practice, we need to understand what we are doing. So at the end of the day, if we just follow the line, it's just we need to research. We need to be curious again. We just need to leave aside the prejudice to, once you have the experience, you can make a judgment just to say, this is not my thing. Because I would like to remind everybody that we work in an industrial of art. So industry has rules, art has other rules. Put them together sometimes is really difficult because sometimes they are against each other. Because in industrialization, you produce volume. In art, well, in art sometimes you don't produce anything, and that is art in itself. And for that, you can see paintings that are just a blank canvas, and they get sold by millions. And there is art in there. I don't share because I don't understand or whatever, but someone has the courage to put a blank canvas in there, and someone else had the money to pay for that. So who am I to say that is not art? So of course, the definition of art in itself is something that depends to the individual. So the ethics is the individual and the conception of art is the individual. So why not the practice to be something as an individual? Because that is the beautiful thing of being art. And I agree also with Ben, the thing like, if you are here, it's because you have something to say. How you say it, that is your thing. I don't care. I seriously don't care if you produce the movie just by painting frames like Loving Vincent, for instance, or if you are using CGI like George Lucas. I seriously don't care. The story is the most important thing, and the story is something like you can produce with the most rudimentary technology, a pencil and a piece of paper. Everything else is just fancy stuff. So at the end of the day, it's all about the intimate experience of creation. So if you are in here to make money, man, you got to the wrong industry, and especially in the wrong time. Just be a dentist or a technician for boilers or something like that. But if you want to be an artist, it's because you have something to say. If you have a camera or you have a pencil or you have a computer that is filling the gaps based on, I don't care. Tell me a story. And that is what is going to trigger now many people. Is like, are you a technician or are you an artist? Because this is a question they asked me many times in interviews when I was interviewing. And that is something like, it makes no sense. I'm an artist that uses technology. I cannot separate that. So sometimes there is more craft, sometimes there is more art. But at some degree, we are all in there in this cloud. We cannot define our work clearly. How can we expect to define our tools and how we use them? So it's fine to have a gray area, and it's good to talk and healthy just to have different opinions and contrast the opinions. But let's respect each other, because that is just going to help everybody.
Yeah.
To add to this, what you are saying, Victor, I remember one recently shown interview from Steve Jobs after Toy Story success. He said Toy Story will be watched in 30 years again, not because of technology, but because of the story about friendship. So
I fully agree too. I mean, one aspect regarding this is, I think, Victor, this is really important, right? You addressed this as a kind, you could say, the difference between fine art. Usually I'm very pedantic about the distinctions between the different things. Let's say fine art, it's a person expressing themselves. On the other hand, there is a machine, let's say the visual effects industry. There's many industries that are art related, but let's say in the context of the VES, there's the visual effects industry. Now, one thing, and that actually ties directly into my next question, and I also addressed this at my last presentation, which I gave at the keynote at the View conference, is the following. In this whole discussion about what is the role of VFX, what is art, kind of where's the distinction and where's the future, one aspect to it, which I think is really crucial, and that also needs to be, let's say, that needs a personal reflection. So the thing is, I would say, to produce Hollywood movies, for example, or to produce really high-end visualizations, you need to have a lot of very skilled artists work for a very long time. To produce the body of work, which is basically the training data, right? But the thing is, and this kind of, it also ties a bit into this aspect of the democratization of art. But the point I want to make is, if you take all the body of work that is produced in the visual effects society, you meat grind it into a tool, let's say like stability, like runway, and don't get me started about the ethics on those things, on how stuff is communicated or not communicated, where the training data is coming from, right? I'm not going to go in this direction, but the point I want to make is the craftsmanship on the artistic side takes such an incredible toll on people, and is their base of expression for their livelihood and for their personality. But then it's also their job. They live of it, like what you just expressed, Victor. But then if you now have a tool that can suddenly produce art, generate, automate the creation of what a lot of other people that are not artists, that are not working in the visual effects industry, that are not fine artists, that never learned how to draw or how to paint or to sculpt or take photographs and so on. And then now they have become artists too. There's a distinction. And the point is the business model behind the tools. And I address this typically as, where is the mode, the business mode of visual effects, if the artists in the industry and if anybody else on social media is producing images with Midjourney, with Sora, and so on, that is not an artist. And those are massive amounts of people that are just paying the subscription, but they have no personal relationship to the creation of the content, right? So it's kind of this, on the business model side, it's the visual effects content was produced basically as a B2B business model, but the derived AI models are sold as B2C to all the influencers, to every layperson out there, and they are all are paying to create art also. And this is, I think, especially in the visual effects industry, something that a lot of people don't understand, in the sense of what the magnitude of the paying power of people that are oblivious to the meaning of art, to those rare specialists. And that's like 1/10 of 1% of people that are capable of producing the original training data, basically. So kind of this aspect is something that is fundamental for me to understand, because that's where the emotions are coming from, right? So maybe to bring this point over to Ben, right? I mean, you addressed before, we're working in the visual effects industry, and you guys at Moon Valley, you guys are working with companies within the industry, with artists within the industry. But what's your opinion if all of the beautiful images that are produced are suddenly sucked out into a $20 per month subscription, and everybody gets access to? What's the future of visual effects in that scenario?
That's a great question, and I understand the thinking behind it. The point is that art is directed, really, and if you are making a film, every frame is thought about, and there's so much goes into the thinking to make that frame or that shot or sequence, and you can't really go to a login on a web app and type in, a shot that you need and get that shot that's going to make any sense in your movie. So you're always going to need people to drive it. I like the analogy of the Godzilla -1 project, which, won the Oscar for visual effects. It's 30 people in a room, including the director, who's the VFX supervisor. They're all talking, they're collaborating. I look at that model, I think, oh yeah, that's exactly how we started visual effects. That's how we did it. I remember the early days producing animation, and we had like teams of 4 people each on an episode. We figured out a pipeline. There were no production management tools. We figured it all out. And it was incredibly collaborative, creative problem solving, much like actually filmmaking always has been. If you work on set, you're solving problems all the time in real time. You have incredibly experienced, talented, creative people bouncing ideas off each other. I love that. And I think visual effects had that, maybe lost it a little bit because it became so global, chasing tax rebates. We could talk about ethics of those. And what happened to the industry? It kind of exploded. And then we had these ups and downs of COVID was actually a massive streaming hit. So there was a lot more work, and then it went away. And then we've got the guilds, who are very powerful in Hollywood, who decide they can set the rules. Right, they've got all this power about what can and can't do. Visual effects doesn't have that power. We're a global industry. There's no way that would work. But we can see what the options are. So I don't really see what you're describing as being the problem of great art being sucked in, and you don't need artists anymore. I think what will happen is that the people at home who are making TikToks or whatever, YouTubes, who are going to type things in, they're going to look at these images and go, wow, that looks so cool. Right, but it doesn't have any meaning, really, particularly, and there's just not going to be a comparison. The more of the threat is that people are going to want to sit at home making stuff rather than maybe watching things that other people have made. That's going to have an impact. But if you look at really what hit the industry, it's theatrical, right? People really don't go much out to the movies anymore. The budgets have all come down, and we have to adapt to that. No one has a right to $100 million to make a movie. Right. That's not how it used to be. It only really happened in the sort of 80s that these budgets exploded. And I think they're going to shrink back down. And I think maybe that will make us more nimble, more creative, more problem solving. I actually expect us to see a higher volume of work coming out. Because I think studios can take more risk. They can lower their budgets. They can speak to more niche audiences. That's also become, everything's become a bit global. So I think there's going to be a lot of shifts, but I think they're going to take 5 years, quite frankly, to really embed. Distribution model has changed. Now the production model needs to change. That'll be it.
There's one point I would like to bring up from history again. when I started doing computer graphics, I was working on a computer that costs like €250,000. And in those days, equipment was the most important thing. And when that started to democratize, when computers became more accessible, became cheaper and everything, it didn't really lead to everybody started producing now and everybody started making computer generated images. It led to something completely different. It led to the fact that now hardware was not the important thing anymore, but people were. And so it concentrated more away from the hardware and more into the personal vision and the personal skills of people. And I'm sort of hoping, I mean, I cannot predict the future, but history tends to repeat itself, and it has in a few occasions already. And I'm sort of hoping that AI will be a way to democratize or make the persons more important again. So we're not like hamsters in a wheel anymore, doing rotoscoping, doing stuff we don't want to do, but it becomes more of um, a valuable thing again, what we are doing, because we have the skills, we have the knowledge to produce a film. And cheap digital cameras didn't change the fact that, of course, some people took the opportunity and started doing their first film, and they went to festivals and they got discovered or they got recognition for what they were doing. But it was never a mass movement. And I don't think that AI is going to create this mass movement where everybody is going to be Steven Spielberg tomorrow, because there is so much more involved. And I think a lot of people also from outside our industry that are sort of feeling sorry for us in a way, do not understand how much skill and how many different crafts and how many different people you need to actually produce a movie. And it doesn't stop with actually making a film. It also comes with distribution, it comes with marketing, it comes with so many different aspects in making a movie that I don't think this one aspect that, yes, AI will start doing our rotoscoping is going to change that much for us as filmmakers.
Just to add on this and or to echo this, I really love it. And I'm also optimistic in this regard because I like also to look in the history. And when we look in the history, we see how there is very often this dialectic process of something that was not important that started to be important again, and there is always some kind of evolution. So now we are still in this hype mode, but this will change. But again, it's important to talk about it so that we can navigate how it changes. And again, highlighting the team behind the art is so crucial. So being online and communicating it to other people and showing how much work is behind it and showing this human achievement, it's so important. And just I think about it now in parallel, for example, to sports. So why we value and watch sports? Because there is this human achievement, right? We don't have robots playing football because who would watch it, right? So maybe now everyone is enthusiastic about AI and there is this hype that people can create something by their own. And I think there is something beautiful in it that people that wouldn't have the courage to express themselves, they can do it. But I would say that in the future, we will see that these AI generated images are very, how to say, maybe they are flattening the meaning, right? Or flattening the expression because they are still based on training data and then work on statistics. So it's like very much based on average. So I would say that once we start to notice it, we will appreciate more the human aspects and the human production. And from my own personal experience, I started to see it in research and in writing. So during my PhD, I didn't use AI at all, and now everyone is using AI to write. But we start to be so annoyed when we see the AI written text. So I could see that something similar can happen also in the art, and in the AI producing images or other artistic things. And then, of course, the discussion, is it art or not?
Exactly. I think that's the doctor is, I completely agree. The AI out the box has a look, it really does. And it's so obvious to see. When we combine AI with human art and the way an artist, exactly the same way an artist would work with Houdini or Nuke or something like that, it just becomes a part of their workflow. It injects into certain stages, then you get something that's unique and it's led by a human in the same way like a render engine, or you use lighting, it calculates things for you, but it doesn't replace you.
Victor had a risen hand to say something. Victor?
Yeah, I wanted to comment on the first statement by Matt, because I think we are giving too much importance to the craft and not too much importance to the art. And I'm going to make a very simple example, which is photography. Before digital, photography was a huge amount of craft. And whoever has done like film negative development and printing knows that you can ruin everything with a very simple gesture, with 1 second more of exposition, with an unbalanced chemical thing. So it was a lot. So of course, what happens when you have digital photography, you do click and that's it, and you download it. Is this losing artistic intent? No, what is redefining what means to be a photographer. Because I see today, I love photography. I started with photography and my brother was a photographer. And I started using the acids and all of that when I was 8. My mom was horrified, by the way. But the thing is like, I understand the craft. I don't consider this thing that many people say like, oh, you are a better photographer if you started with analog photography. Absolutely not. Photography is about an eye and lighting. And then many years ago, it was also about development and all of that. Now we are sharing that with the manufacturers of sensors. And now we are paying way more attention to lenses because now we have enough resolution to recognize that. So we are now shifting the way we consider ourselves as artists. So maybe visual effects artists need to reconsider what is to be a visual effects artist today, not 5 years ago. So this is the real question. And regarding the question of the prompts, because first of all, AI, generative AI, is not just prompting. You need to design a workflow that is made with many nodes of many single operations, and it's a very complicated and articulated process. But I'm just going to stop in the question of the prompt, because writing something that is going to be developed into something else, that is maybe the craft that in Hollywood is the less recognized of all, which is screenwriting. A screenwriter, and I study screenwriting is just creating a text that alone words nothing. It needs to be developed, so it's a structure for something else. It's like a blueprint for an architect. It's nothing. It's just a blueprint. But is that the meaning that the blueprint worth nothing? Because for me and many people, that is the most important process of the whole movie. If you can have the best artist in the world, if the script is not working, everybody knows in here that it can ruin the whole thing. And for that, I'm just going to link to something that is a trend that we are having these days, which is CG is ruining movies. This thing that I hate, or CG is for losers, quoting a very famous actor. This thing is just coming because many stories that we have been serving are really, really bad. And we have been doing movies that sadly the stories are really bad, or maybe they were trying to rip off other movies. Or maybe there was a very good movie and then they were doing sequel, but with less money and all of that. So now that is creating the impression that it's CGI that is ruining movies, but it's all about the story. So this is what I mean. It's like at the end of the day, it's all about the act of expression of the idea. And that can be expressed with a prompt, that can be expressed with a pencil, that I don't mind. The machine is at the service of the human that is behind. Of course, in a way or in another, filling a gap or another. But it's all about the imperfection of being human. That is what I like about filmmakers. We like Tarantino because he makes the movies in a certain way, or Martin Scorsese, or whoever is an author. We love the way they have, their point of view. And standardization is just going to be like digital cameras. Now, everybody has a camera with their phone, but who is a photographer in there? Anybody can be a photographer with this, and seriously, this makes crazy good pictures, especially if you started just with an analog camera. But that is not being a photographer. So I agree with the thing of the gear is not making the artist. So it's maybe this AI thing is just going to make us more human. That is my hope. That maybe now we are going to start understanding, oh, that is actually what I like about being human. That is this way that I have of doing things. This is what I love. So I am very aggressive with this idea that no, art is not going to stop here. Art is going to develop in new forms. It's impossible to stop art. Rebellions are based on hope.
I mean, I would completely agree, right? And I love the passion. I love the passion. The aspect which I just think is, and that's so important in the dialogue, right? There's not a right or wrong. And my mission, why I'm doing events like these, is basically by having the dialogue and then precisely with a scalpel take out exactly the nugget that is so important for people to understand. And those are the things that are not addressed enough. And you just gave a very precise couple of examples of art doesn't mean using technology, or kind of all those things. But what I want to get to, why events like this are so important, is precisely for the fact that people that have the experience in being able to separate the two things and give analogies, give examples of why, let's say, developing a photograph from a film versus digital camera is not the same thing. But this is the stuff that is not kind of put in text and in pamphlets and in the classrooms enough to educate people in general, and I think because they're too stressed, it takes a long ass time and experience to grasp those strong opinions. But you need to or society, to me at least, and a ton of artists don't get a chance to either make those experiences and live and get a chance to make up their own opinion. And also they're hanging in hand because they don't get enough access to those emotions and value statements as just yours, Victor, or before, basically by everybody in the panel. And the difference is, what is the missing thing between those two worlds that we would need to isolate and basically put into a recipe that everybody can see, oh, that's what they mean. And that's how I can use the recipe, which I can use to read through the bullshit, to read through what do I actually want to do as an artist. Am I an artist? Should I work in this industry? And so on. And that's the struggle. That's a much, much bigger struggle than having the dialogue if you have a functioning value system and if you have a technical mindset and you have the experience. We all have that together. But what's the delta that is missing that 95% of other people don't have, right? That's why what we're doing here is so incredibly important, right?
I think what you're
Yes.
saying about this struggle is not new. I mean, we've all went through that when we started going to art school, when we were getting comments from our parents that maybe we would be poor artists living under the bridge, you know. So that struggle is sort of what made us who we are in the end, you know. And I don't think that AI is going to change anything about that. And to be
Maybe
quite
it's just
honest,
proving the point, right? Maybe
yeah,
it's
it is
just proving
proving
the
the
point.
point. I always say AI is very much a mirror of ourselves, and in this case, it really is. And I think that is the difference between us and a lot of other people that have not taken this risk in their life, where they're saying, okay, I'm going to take the jump. I'm going to put like this sticker on myself saying I am an artist. I'm going to do something meaningful, and I'm taking a lot of risk. I'm not going to make a lot of money. If I would invest the same amount of time in some other profession, I would probably be a rich guy by now. So I think that difference is not going away with AI. And also the exposure you're giving yourself when you're saying of yourself, look, I am an artist, I'm putting my work out there. You're taking a risk. People may say that you are an idiot. They might say that they don't like it, that it has no value. You're actually exposing yourself there. And I don't think that AI is going to change that, that people are going to say, okay, now I have made something with AI and I'm actually going to take that risk. I don't believe that.
About Gintz, who made the film Flow. And a good path for a director is you make a short film and you get some success and you build up your career and you build up your expertise, you build your craft. And it takes time. One of the reasons it takes time is no one's going to give you the money to make a feature film out of the box. Now that's changed, right? Technically, he could have made Flow not on his own maybe, but with a small, much smaller team of people, and he could have made a whole feature film in probably a lot less than 3 years. So I think there is an opportunity here for people who have a passion and belief, artists who want to get out there and make stuff that they can. It still requires investment, it still requires talent and craft, but that is now possible. And the difference with this technology than the others that we talked about was that we're not hardware dependent. If you're at home, it's a pretty low subscription to a lot of these things, and you get access to multi-billion-dollar technology, and that's never been possible. You know, the computer example earlier of $500,000 boxes, even when it was on a Windows machine, I was part of the 3D Studio Max launch team promoting, hey, you can make your stuff in Windows. Still needed a great graphics card, still thousands of dollars. But that's always been a problem with technology. There's a massive capital investment needed. This time it's changed, so now anyone really can access it and create what I would call production value visuals, even if it's not production value story. So I think that is a big change, and it does open the door for everybody who wants to be an artist to be an artist, and you'll find out how good you are. Do people respond to your art?
Yeah, I think
Thanks,
so.
Ben. We are about to run out of time, so I will quickly would like to address some questions that are from audience here. I will address just the questions just because we have some statements. I will not address those. I will address those you can read by yourself. But I start with Jim Gedaldik. I hope, Jim, I spoke well your name. There are a lot of hypothetical views on this talk. Yeah, it's true. This is a business at the end of the day, and those business decisions tend to outweigh the artists and technologies creating in terms of the ethics. How do you see impact of studios, boutiques, and clients who already are leaning on the move fast break things in terms of tools and platform choices being used in shots, productions, because it fits the good, fast, or cheap approach? Most people who have been hurting from work may not turn down to work because their needs outweigh using unethical solutions. Who wants to answer this question? You can read it again if I was unclear with reading, but it's because of the recording. I have to do this, so the people that watch the recording has to listen to the question.
I think there's one point that, yes, I mean, film is a business and we all want to make money. But this is sort of connecting to what Victor has been saying. If films are turning into slop, if it's just bad stories, they are not going to sell. I mean, so I think the temptation to get into cheap ways of production is, of course, very big, but I think it'll backfire in the end, and people will start to recognize that if they want to make money, they have to deliver a quality product. That has always been the same thing in any industry. You need to have a quality product in the end. And I think that is our biggest ace that we have as filmmakers.
That's basically the difference between price and value, right? So, I mean, sure, we did talk about a lot of hypothetical views, but also those views are very, very subjective, right? In the sense of we are in our own bodies, we have our own experiences, and we've just makes it very, very subjective, the whole thing, right? But Victor, please go on.
I wanted to say that it is true that there is a lot of hypothetical, because of course there are cases that we are addressing that maybe we don't have direct experience. But what I can say regarding businesses that are using unethical practices, something that I will suggest is like, for me as a professional, and now I'm not saying as an artist, as a professional, I just pay attention who I'm mixing with. So there are certain companies, for instance, in the visual effects industry that I never wanted to get mixed with because I don't share their values, their way of doing things. And I never inquired for work there. The world is big, so there are many other companies. And if everybody has that kind of ethical code or philosophy or whatever you want to call it, but if you just isolate these individual companies, or you have the guts just to say, I don't like what this company is doing, I quit and I'm going somewhere else. That is being principled. Of course, if you sell yourself for the money, it's a different thing, and I'm not even going to judge anybody because everybody has to, but you always have the choice. So, for instance, if I'm now inquiring for a company, I will ask, what are your points, what are your views with the use of AI? Just based on that answer, you can just make a decision, because you are not, yeah, you need a job, but you can also have other jobs that are going to bring a lot of money and they are very unethical. But are you going to do that? So the thing is like, pay attention who you are mixing with, and the rest is just natural selection. If everybody does the same, that company needs to change. So that is, again, power to the community. But if everybody is just lowering their standards and just doing everything, yeah, of course. So they are going to do whatever they can because you are allowing them to do it. So, and this is not hypothetical in my case. And I can say I refuse offers from working in certain companies many years ago, not now. But yeah, you have to have your personality.
Just to add on this, sorry.
We have really a lot of questions since we're a little bit out of time. But Jana, if you can keep it short, you can do it. It's great.
Yeah, I just wanted to share my perspective as an ethicist and philosopher. So some years ago, I was a consultant in ethics, and it was very interesting to see how many people saw me as the bad guy, ironically, because I was there to prohibit things, which is not the case. It was more about protect what is important for the company and enable an environment where high value products can be produced in the end. But what I want to say is that in the last years, the public cares much more about ethics. There is always questions about trust, and the awareness in the public is higher and higher, and this is a very positive development in the society. So yes, that's what I wanted to add.
So I go to the first question. Ahmed Hassan said just a very simple thing that we all know. As a business owner, I now can have 2 artists do the work instead of 5, for example, due to the rapid advancement in tech. It's happening so fast in front of our eyes. It is undeniable, but everybody seems to avoid talking about it. I'd love if this panel can address it. Before somebody of panelists take this over, I want Ahmed to tell you I am a guy that comes from computer graphics, and I was there when Photoshop came out. And I seen a lot of lithographs, people that worked with films and with analog compositing that haven't survived the change, and they had to change their profession. So there will always be some changes where some people will not can do it, and then there were 2 people who could do a lot of work with Photoshop instead of 10. They were working on these lithographs. I think we are in the similar thing right now, but we have something different. We are using the technology. It's not the leap from analog to digital anymore. We are in digital still. So I think everybody who wants to change can. Just have to dare. So anybody else wants to add something to this first?
Yeah, sure. I think it's good to have frank conversation. So I appreciate you sending that question. And there's different ways of looking at it. And you're the business owner. It's up to you how you run your business. You might look at it and go, hey, I can reduce from 5 to 2. Or you might think, hey, I can increase my output by 300% and keep 5 people. It depends on the 5 people you've got, obviously. You can't, I think the old phrase is 9 women can't make a baby in a month. It's so if you think about it, it's about how you use your skills, and there is a fact that things take time. Be smart about where you use technology. I'm sure when you went from CPUs to GPUs, your render times went up, and you figured out what's the ROI on that and how does that work. So no one can really answer what you should do with your business, but I do think it's true to say that if people want to increase efficiency, reduce schedules, I think that's a reality. I think that everybody wants that. Filmmakers want it, studios want it. It's not necessarily about saving money, but it's about getting your product to market quicker, right? You want to release your film fast. And I think about the massive K-pop Demon Hunters success. No one knew that was going to happen. Netflix want to make more. They've scheduled like 2029 for their next movie. I'm sure they would rather that was 2027, and using generative AI could help speed that production process up, but it would never replace the artist. It would never replace, the storytelling and the design. It would just make it a lot quicker.
I would like to add something. It's like, okay, so before you have 5 artists, now you have 2. Well, I will say, be careful, because maybe you are going to find a new company with those 3 artists that are going to use the same technology you are using, and maybe they are going to steal your jobs. So this is the thing. It's like, maybe before there was one company with big amount of artists. Now you are going to have many companies serving so many projects. So it's changing. So it's like energy. It's just going to transform. It's not going to disappear. Those artists need a job. And sooner or later, someone is just going to realize, I need a job, I'm going to create my own job. That is what happened to me. And I became a supervisor. Here you are.
Mel, exactly what is happening in Europe, especially, or everywhere. We are seeing much more boutique studios than before. Not a large companies anymore. It's not a model. That's also a change. So, yeah, think about it. So, we go to the next session. From Dominic Taroli, when you talk about ethics or responsible deployment, where exactly are your ethics coming from? What's the foundational framework, or is ethics just an opinion? Jana, do you want to take this?
Yes, probably that's a question for me. So there is more than 2000 years of history of ethics. Now we have the new field, let's say, ethics of AI, and it's very much based on reasoning. So having reasons behind it and justifications, talking to different communities, but also looking at the empirical research and looking how the ethics can impact different fields. So it's very hard to say if there is one foundational framework. I would say For example, in medicine, there are few, but I would say that in today's environment of AI, when everything is changing, it's important to go also away from these general frameworks and have also bottom-up approaches. So again, looking at what are the real needs and collect data and then develop new ethical frameworks. And again, ethics is a lot of about mediation and enabling dialogue and create a space of understanding what are the problems, how can we deal with them. And very often ethics doesn't have an answer. And I think it's a good thing because again, it's a process, the dialogue. And it's also very important that people are being heard and have space to express what is important for them, what are their worries, and again, how to deal with them. So it's definitely not opinions. It's a lot about justification, looking into history, and engaging also empirical research into it. Just short answer again.
Yeah, great answer. To the point. It's ethics is a complex theme. That's why we have to talk about it all of the time, and it's evolving like everything else around us. Ethics as well. So, Kat Legeza centers humongous electricity and water demands? Question mark. I don't know in what
That's
occasion.
regarding that's data centers. Environmental impact.
Just a quick, I'm sorry about this. I answered the question above, and I didn't realize when you answer a question, it then goes to a different category. So that was a follow-on because they were talking about the environmental impact, which I do think is a very, relevant, incredibly important topic. I think it's easy to point fingers at generative AI and say it's using a lot of power. I don't know the comparison between a render farm that has to go through multiple iterations and takes hours per frame compared to a GPU node that produces 15 seconds in 2 minutes. I actually don't know the difference in the amount of power used between them. I just know that if you can do a visual effects schedule in 6 months rather than 18 months, my guess is a lot less power is used, but I don't know.
I think the aspect of that is broadly or much more a topic beyond just the visual effects industry, because the data centers, I mean, in certain regions of the United States, because the power grid is getting like so strongly, let's say, like used or overused. Just over the last, let's say, 2 years, electricity costs for the general population that don't even necessarily proactively use or actively use AI for anything, but in general, because there's a data center in a certain geographic region, electricity prices were rising 15-18%, right? So, and that's more a global topic, but I think it's, in my opinion, it's absolutely in the bigger picture of the discourse beyond VFX. It's absolutely also one of those ethical aspects. Absolutely.
There are always side effects at every change, and this is one of them for sure. Ida Diveki, I believe that human authenticity is our great advantage over AI. Do you think this AI wave could have a positive impact on how we see ourselves? That if we want to distinguish ourselves from tools, we must preserve or cultivate our humanity?
I think it's a great question. And I believe anything that makes you reflect on who you are is positive for human beings. And art in itself, you go to a museum and you ask this question. It's like, what do you see when you see art? So it's not about the art, it's how you see yourself in relation to that. So it's all about the experience. We are social beings. So everything that is impacting the environment is just going to question, what is my position in this environment? So absolutely. And this is because AI is trying to impersonate like intelligence. If we just try to define intelligence in itself, is already a complicated thing. But intelligence, so we feel like we have a new player in here that is trying to behave like us. He's disguised as a human. So that's why we feel threatened, because he's disguised as a human. And of course, we work in visual effects, so we know very well the Terminator, Darth Vader, and all of that. So we have like a lot of machine trying to kill us. Of course, we feel threatened, but the thing is like there are other machines that are good. And maybe this relation is going to change. I remember very clear the impact that Terminator 2 have on me, because the Terminator that was the bad guy became the father figure. And this thing is like a, oh, so a machine can actually protect. And so anything, a book, your work, anything that makes you think about yourself, that is healthy. So talk about that and keep reflecting.
Thank you, Victor. Another question: as most companies are building systems, architectural level AI designs, multi-platform cognitive frameworks, etc. On a user level, there are no ethical guardrails in most of the systems. How do we design, or could we design, an ethics-based operating system for culture, laws, identity, baseline user protocols, even brand communication? How could we get government buy-in to hold businesses and people accountable, as Denmark did with their new AI legislation? This from Theo Clark.
So maybe I can take this another huge question. Yeah, I think that first having a legislation or some rules that would force the companies to have transparency would be very important. Like this is a key to understand how these models were developed. And then another very important aspect is to developing these models with the users and with the community and thinking about who these users are. And having this very iterative and inclusive process of development. And there are also other ethical frameworks that already exist and that can be embedded, but I think these two aspects are very crucial.
Thank you, Jana. And now we go to question from Bella Bayer. Question for the group. So, but feel free, everybody, to take over to things if you can answer. If AI tools cost as much as a nuke or old school flame license, would anyone still be happily generating neon-eyed goblins at 3 a.m. in the morning? Translation: right now, AI feels like a very cheap buffet, so we discuss ethics. But from an industrial viewpoint, if each prompt came with some financial gravity, how many of us will suddenly discover a deep connection to pencils again? How much of today's AI slop would evaporate the moment it had the industrial and financial pressure of a production behind it? Good question, Bella.
I think there is a few aspects to this. One aspect is that none of us really knows what the AI we are using is costing. I mean, all these companies, they are investing billions and billions into AI, and they're not making 1 cent of profit. I mean, that's not going to last forever. At some point, we will be presented with a bill. The other thing that I heard from her question is that yes, I think there will be a lot of AI slop. I mean, that's what we had when YouTube opened its gates. I mean, maybe some people are not old enough to remember, but when YouTube started out, there was it was the most boring and uninteresting thing to watch because there was only trash on there. People would make a film of their dog and upload it. And it has been professionalized, but it has also led to the fact that people started to recognize that there is a difference between the slop and the noise, and I'm sure we're going to see that all over again. It's going to flood us like it did when social media started out, when YouTube started. We're going to be flooded with that, and I think there will be every movement always has a counter movement, and I think that when you go from slop and low quality, in the end, I think it will bounce back and it will make people recognize what the difference actually is.
I think there's also just a quick comment on that. I think that that's also not necessarily let's say the definition of the price point based on the, let's say, within the financial, what's it called, like the price elasticity within a given market. That's not what's happening here. The thing is, the most foundational LLM models, or let's say image generative models, are produced by companies that don't have a background in understanding art, I would say, just right. And so there's this global fight over who gets the dominance in basically the market and the tools around the foundational models. And so they have been, and I've seen this in the business news over and over again. It's not sustainable because they're constantly trying to underprice each other to get market percentage, because their market evaluation depends on the market percentage and the investments and all of that stuff. The problem is that this is now pushed over into all of the industries, because it's, for engineers, it's really easy to, what could we do with all of these new technologies? Well, graphics is a fantastic application, so let's go in this direction. They could invest in things like, I mean, there's a little bit of work done in the medical field, but there's tons of space debris. There's mines in war zones. There could be, like, food distribution on the planet could be solved with AI, but that's not the hip stuff to be doing, right? So now the problem, because of this constant undermining each other's pricing, basically the LLM token price is converging towards zero. And not only that, but also for images which are produced, let's say generative images. So there's numbers that for each Sora 2 video which is produced, there's numbers, approximations. I'm not a specialist in that field, but there's approximate numbers that one of these costs $5 to produce in electricity and the whole infrastructure. And so per month, that sums up to about $15 million just for producing endless amounts of absolute slop.
Matt, I'm sorry,
right.
I have to shorten your answer. We are 20
Yeah.
minutes over time, and
Yeah.
I need to answer just one more question we have here.
Sure.
Manoli, sorry, I will not be able to take your question because I have to quit this now, this recording. Sylvia Bardaggi, I've been in the industry for a year as a junior compositor, and I'm very interested in AI and where it's headed. I do feel the fear you mentioned, as I see many generations build with AI on social media. For me, prompting is the art of communication with AI. I completely agree with Victor's statement that prompting is screenwriting, but I don't know where to go, what AI to learn to survive in the industry. What advice could you give me for these first steps in the industry? Please, just one should answer this time. We don't have time for more answers. Thank you.
I think this is a very fundamental question if you're getting into visual effects. I mean, to put it short, it's a lifetime of learning, and you will always have these challenges for the next 50 years if you want to be in visual effects. So these uncertainties, these changes, these disruptions will not go away.
Yeah. I'm so sorry that I have to quit this. Like I said in the beginning, we can go on and talk about this. And of course, there are hypothetical things. There are meanings, but they are all based on some really good thoughts, deep thinking, and people that were really engaged with that. And of course, if somebody was searching here for really relieving answers or formulas, no, there are no formulas. There are just guidances for you in the future, how to deal with some things. That's why keep being curious, keep being hungry in what you're doing, what you're creating, and don't let you be defined by AI. You are still the person in charge. Know yourself that you are more than the AI, and the AI should be your servant and not vice versa. Thank you very much to everyone here, Ben, Jana, Victor, Matt, my partner in crime, and Frank. I hope in the next time we will be more with something else, maybe some more insights. But the industry of AI is changing. We are having a lot of products that maybe tomorrow will not exist. It was the car industry in the beginning as well. A lot of cars, a lot of experiments, and then just the best survived. This is not going to be different with AI as well. So thanks a lot and see you soon. When recording is done, there will be a link at Visual Effects Society sites and at ICE.ART websites as well. And everybody that signed in will get a notification when the recording is there. So keep in touch and stay hungry to create. Bye-bye, and thank you very much.